Hi, this is Keith with Mies on Minis here at Lock&Load 2013 with Doug Seacat, the lead writer for Privateer Press.
That's right. You guys are having a great show, I hope?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm having a fantastic time playing some games, talking to people. So we're just going to talk about the brand new Convergence of Cyriss book that came out here at the show and sort of what went into, or background information on Convergence.
Sure.
All right, so I read the book. Refer to my notes here. They're coming up with something that they're calling the Great Work. The Convergence is a newer movement within that spawned from the cult.
Well, sort of. It's not too new. It's sort of newly emerging into the world's eye. The idea with the Convergence is that a few decades after the discovery of the goddess Cyriss by some astronomers, a particular group came together with a goal in mind, and the story that's at the start of the Convergence book kind of sets that in motion. It takes us back in time to kind of the beginning of the Convergence, which is started by Father Lucan, one of our iconic Cyriss characters, and the idea is that in the course of trying to figure out how to transfer a soul from a living person into a machine body, a clockwork vessel, they had communication with the goddess and basically had a revelation of this great work that they could conduct to bring Cyriss to Cain. And so that's sort of their big overarching goal, is to make some changes to the world, despite who might get in their way, in order to bring their goddess to Cain, at least her essence.
And so she would inhabit the world as a soul inhabits a clockwork vessel.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what would the end result of that be?
Good things, I'm sure. It's all wonderful.
Do they even know? Do they suspect?
They suspect that it would mean that Cyrus's principles, those of logic, mathematics, engineering, could become dominant over some of the chaotic, random, entropic forces that are currently controlling the world. Living creatures, for example. So I think we would kind of imagine sort of a machine-dominated world where everything worked with clockwork precision.
She would supplant the worm and all that.
Sure, yeah, get rid of all that messy nature and organic nonsense that's currently in the way.
So the Convergence was a movement that was started shortly. Was it before or after they discovered the process of encasing?
It's pretty much right after. Which again, it's really tied into the story of Father Lucan. The story in the Convergence book basically starts with Father Lucan as a person, as a living priest who's been brought into the Convergence in the facility that's working on this problem. There's sort of the dilemma of how to preserve a soul and transfer it into a machine body, and a certain character from Crix is a key part of that process.
I noticed.
Before she becomes Mortenebra, Mortenebra was part of the cult of Cyriss. And so she was part of that team that was working to solve that problem. And it was kind of a really defining moment where they were able to kind of make that transition by rejecting certain things that Mortenebra wanted to do and kind of finding their own path.
But her research was what led to what led Lucan to the conclusion that
you could say that. But she definitely she contributed her part. She was a brilliant researcher, a brilliant scientist, but just a little bit too drawn toward necromantic solutions. She would consider herself to be open-minded,
right.
Willing to explore all avenues. But
so is she aware of the Great Work? Is she aware of the overarching
That's
plan?
a good question. We haven't revealed. Chances are that she would have a better sense of what they're doing. She understands the principles that are behind how all of the Convergence's machinery works. But she might not know the details of the places that they need to go, the actual machinery that they need to make. A lot of that became developed after she had been already cast out and joined Crix.
And now the blueprint, if you will, for the Great Work is sort of being interpreted through the cipher machine.
Yes,
and that's mainly what Lucan does. It's his biggest contribution is that he is the interpreter.
Yeah, sort of like being an oracle. One of the ideas with the Convergence is that their communication with their goddess is very indirect, and she's a very mysterious, enigmatic goddess one reason why nobody even knew about Cyriss for most of human history is that she was hidden and waiting for people to reach a certain degree of sophistication before they could realize that she existed. And so the only communication that she has with her faithful is through these sort of enigmatic codes, these sort of encrypted messages. The same temple facility that Father Lucan was involved in, that was working on the Soul Project, had previously created basically a mechanical calculator, a machine that could do math. And it was through this machine that Cyrus's messages started to emerge. And they first seemed like errors, like you would put in a formula and get some kind of result that wasn't accurate. But the priests of Cyriss began to see patterns in these errors and realized that the goddess was actually communicating with them. And so Father Lucan is sort of the most adept at interpreting those codes.
And it was upon his transcendence, or his when he joined with the Clockwork Vessel, and his mind became clear, and he started to see the patterns.
Yeah,
and
definitely
the great work
had some breakthroughs.
From that.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing I want to talk about is regarding Cyriss's divinity. We talk about her as a goddess, but she doesn't seem to be a goddess in the same way that the other divine beings in Cain are.
She's definitely different, but the way that the Cyriss worshippers look at her is as a primal goddess, which would make her more similar to, say, Dunia or the Devourer Worm, which are themselves a bit different from some of the other gods. And the idea there is that Cyriss is thought to be an embodiment of certain universal principles, that she's always existed. As long as there were rules governing matter and energy, Cyriss existed as sort of the conscious awareness and governing force behind the rules of physics, the laws of physics.
Physics and mathematics govern the operations of the universe, and from that governance comes Cyriss.
And so in that regard, she's sort of the Cyriss worshippers see her as this basically a universal but very subtle and enigmatic goddess who has nonetheless acted upon people through inspiration. The idea in the history section of the book we get into is that Cyriss has had an influence on great minds throughout time.
Acting like a muse.
Acting like a muse. And many of the people who were affected by her had no idea. They just thought they had an idea. They came up with a great innovation. But it might have been Cyriss at least guiding them or providing maybe a solution that otherwise they might not have been able to come to. So there's a way that the Cyriss religion has sort of co-opted great figures in other religions, kind of taking credit for some of their accomplishments. So.
One of the cool things that the Convergence has done as far as their governing body, they elect a leader every 9 years to take them forward, but they also have the election process is done by a machine called the Constellation.
Sort of yeah, it's both a machine and people. The Constellation is one of the most interesting aspects of the sort of the Convergence society. The idea is that when you transfer your soul into this essence vessel to be able to be installed in a machine, some of the Convergence people who work on, say, like abstract mathematics or pure science, they actually like a state of pure thought, and they kind of find a body distracting, even a clockwork body. And so some of those people have chosen to kind of take their soul out of their body, out of a clockwork body, and install it in this constellation, which is, it's sort of like a society of minds. And so you could have like hundreds of Convergence members that are disembodied inside this machine that allows them to communicate with one another and sort of together come up with decisions, work on problems collectively. And this has kind of become an important sort of advising body for the Convergence, and helps make decisions as well as solving really difficult problems. And so they trust the Constellation to electing their new leader every
Iron Mother
years.
Or Iron
Either
Father.
Iron Mother or Iron Father. And the idea is that Lucan was the first Iron Father, but at some point after a couple of decades of kind of setting the Convergence in motion, he became worried that if they were always ruled by the same person, they would have stagnation, and they wouldn't welcome new ideas. And so every 9 years he wanted to.
And that was represented in his early story when he was the priest that he was working under was hammering at the same idea over and over again to try to complete that project, and it wasn't working.
Right.
So he probably could have learned from that, and then taken that and transfer that to the Convergence as a whole.
It's absolutely, yeah. He sort of, he was able to sort of. To me, it shows a lot about Lucan's character. He wasn't about power, about being in control. He really believes in the great work. He is a genuinely devout Cyriss worshiper, wanted the great work to happen, and so was willing to step down from the seat of power to do what was best for the faction, and kind of set this process in motion whereby the leader would change periodically to kind of bring in fresh blood or new ideas, or a leader that would be particularly well suited to whatever's going on.
So the Iron Mother Directrix has been elected now as the leader of the Convergence, going into what is now called the Time of Alignment.
Or the Phase of Alignment.
The Phase of Alignment.
Yes.
And what is that?
The Phase of Alignment is an exciting period if you're in the Convergence. The idea with the Phase of Alignment is that the Convergence has done all the work that it can on the great work covertly that it can up till now. They've spent the last few centuries hidden in their temple facilities, working on machines, creating their weapons, but they knew at some point they would have to emerge from those workshops and confront the nations, do things on the surface that maybe other people might not like.
Some nexus points they couldn't take without
Some of the key locations that they need to grab are inhabited by other people. There might be factories there.
Circle holy sites.
Yeah, circle holy sites. And so the idea is they've done all the preparation work that they can. Now to really put things in motion in Western Immorin, they're going to have to go to war, basically. And so the Phase of Alignment is marching to war to seize these locations, to kind of change the geomantic flows below the surface of Cain. And that's something that, like the Circular Boros, is probably not too keen about, because they rely on those same energy flows for their power.
Nor Ios.
Nor Ios, yes.
All right. Doug, thank you very much.
Yes, certainly.
I enjoyed the book very much.